Susan Gardner here from Municipal World. We are at the 2019 Transforming Local Government Conference in Reno, Nevada. Joining me in the Media Center this afternoon is Diann Kirby. Diann is the Director of Community Services for the City of Bloomington, Minnesota. So, you did a presentation here at TLG on networks, mapping the ties that bind.
That's correct.
Beyond the organizational chart. The webs we weave. So everybody's familiar with traditional organizational charts and the formal flows of information and so on. But you took a look at something different.
We did. So we went beyond the formal org chart to take a look at how our particular department was operating. We had an opportunity that was presented to us by the University of Minnesota. We had researchers who are doing organizational network analyses for the private sector, for the nonprofit sector, had never done the government sector. So they came to our organization and they wanted to map one of our departments and offered to do that for free in order to get this research on a government sector organization. So I raised my hand and said, yes,
Jumped right
I'd be
in.
very interested. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, what did that look like?
So basically what that looked like was, it was actually a two-part analysis. So half of it was doing a survey amongst all of our employees. There were 122 full-time and part-time employees that were surveyed. And so there was a survey that took about 20-25 minutes to complete that asked a lot of questions about employees, who they went to for advice, who they went to for friendships, who were their friends within the department, and then who they trusted within the department and within their own team and their own division. And then also the researchers came in and actually did in-person observations. So they wanted to see, once they got that research, to kind of get some kind of in-person, what is going on?
Does it match up to what we heard in the survey?
It did, and it actually provided some additional information when they did the in-person observations, which we found out later on when they came to us with the results.
Okay, so there were 3 networks that they kind of identified.
Yeah, and one of the keys to doing the survey was they needed at least 80% of the 122 employees to fill out the survey in order to really get valid, good survey data so that they could map our networks. And so we were able to achieve, we got 84%, which was a really good, solid result. And so we got some really good, I think, very valid look at what was going on within our own department.
How did employees feel about that process?
That's a good question. Actually, it was a lengthy survey. Like I said, it was about 20-25 minutes. They had to identify coworkers that they worked with on a regular basis. They had to answer questions about friendships with those coworkers, if they went to them for advice on a regular basis, and then also trusting. Did they trust those coworkers? So I did get questions during the survey process from employees who said, where's this data going? Is this confidential? I don't want anybody to know. Can I trust that this is not going to get beyond this? And I was able to assure them that this is all being done by the University of Minnesota.
Arm's length.
Arm's length, totally outside of our organization. We would never see any of the behind the scenes information, and nobody would ever be identified in the final results, which turned out to be the case. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were talking, a coworker was saying today how for her as a participant, what she really liked about it was, this is a different type of survey. You never really hear somebody coming in and surveying you about who are your friends at work. You don't see that in a typical employee engagement survey. So it was kind of a fascination thing, curiosity thing. Let's take it and see what the results look like.
Yeah, and it can be surprising sometimes.
It can be.
I participated in kind of a networking exercise myself one time that looked at the things that influenced the choices that you've made in your life and how you ended up where you are, where you went to school, who the people that you connected with, and it's actually kind of surprising when you see the results of that analysis. So were there some surprises for the city?
I would have to say yes, there were surprises. There were some surprises. One was we were looking at the friendship networks. And it was really interesting because with a friendship network, when you're friends with somebody at work, it makes work more pleasant. You're more likely to support people. You're more likely to trust people too. You don't necessarily have to be good friends at work, but if there's some sort of even a moderate friendship, it just makes work go much more smoothly. And what we saw was we had one of our teams, we surveyed 5 teams, and one of them had no friendship ties to the rest of the teams, the other 4 teams. And the reason was they were in a different building. So, of course, and the researchers noticed that, and so, of course, if you're not working with somebody on a day-to-day basis, you're not necessarily going to have those kind of friendships because those are built, day after day, time after time, working together with somebody. So that was kind of interesting to see that one. But probably the biggest surprise was in the trust networks. So with the trust network, what the researchers were looking for was kind of the perceived ability of somebody. Were they competent? Was your coworker competent? Can they do their job? It also looked at benevolence. Do they care about me? And then the other questions they were asking about was integrity. Do they keep their word? Are they reliable? Can I trust what they tell me is true? So those were the types of questions that were being asked on the trust network. And it was interesting because we had 3 of our divisions that scored above what you would expect to see. And one almost at the top of the chart in terms of very high trust levels. And if you look at their map, it looks like a spider web. It's just got all of these ties across, and thick ties, which means very, very highly trusted individuals. They trust each other, they work well together, and they're trusting across too, not just that division, but across to other divisions. But we did have one division where the trust level actually fell into negative territory. Wow. And that's unusual. And that was one of the things the researchers asked me, do you want this information shared with your staff when we share the full results? And I said yes, because it was really important. They had taken the time, they'd taken the survey.
Yes.
It was important that we share with them to have total transparency. And I thought it was important. And plus, they probably knew, if you're working in that kind of environment, then you're working in that kind of environment. It was just shocking to see how low the trust level was. And it was when the researchers were asked by our staff when they presented the results, well, is it because we've got some of our employees who work in the evenings and they don't necessarily work during the daytime with these other coworkers? Or is it because some of these coworkers work in a different building and so they don't necessarily work together? And the researchers said, no, not when you fall into negative territory. You're answering more questions negative than you are positive about your coworkers. So pretty low trust levels within that particular group.
So does that become a flag then? I mean,
certainly, yes. Obviously it does. Yes. And I think that's why the researchers said, do you want to share this? It does. And then it also becomes, this is all about becoming a high-performing organization. How can we improve? How can we innovate? And the more information we have, the more we can do to become a higher-performing organization. Right. So that gave us some details. At the same time, this particular team was going through a service analysis, a year-long service analysis. And actually the team ended up changing. And it wasn't necessarily because of this particular survey, but we did make some changes to that particular team. And now I think it's a very much a high-performing team. The team members, and I think they remember what happened in the past, and they're trying to get past that and trying to create more trust and more open communication. And so there's a lot being done to try to make things better within that group.
That's awesome.
It was fascinating.
So was there any correlation? The question is, you've got this org chart and we think it kind of maps, authority and power structures to some extent. Was there a correlation? Did it match up at all?
To the formal org chart?
Yeah.
I would say maybe a little bit in the advice network. So that's who do you go to every day for advice, for information? And to a certain extent, I would say it probably did. Now, of course, there were no names attached to the charts, but I think it probably does a little bit more, but not necessarily. There are some people who are considered knowledge brokers, who are the keepers of information, who aren't necessarily the division manager, but they're somebody that they work across borders, they work across divisions, departments, and they've got a lot of knowledge. And so those are the type of people that can be the ones that they may be lower on the org chart than you would typically expect for somebody with that kind of information.
Right. Well, those are it's an interesting story for sure, and some great insights for people to think about. And as you said, something that's identified as an issue, it's not the survey, of course, that's created the issue. It's a symptom of something that needs to be addressed in the organization. Exactly. So it's another feedback mechanism on that journey.
Absolutely. A powerful tool, and I think a nice supplement to the typical employee engagement survey.
Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
For coming in, Diann, and chatting with us. It's been nice learning about your initiative there at the city.
Thank you.
I'm Susan Gardner for Municipal World. We share your stories.